Hey up, and welcome to Shakespeare's stage. I'm Matty, and I'll be going through one of the bard's darkest tragedies with me good friend Dave.
Hi, hello there. I'm Dave, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be discussing Macbeth with you today. Such a powerful play, full of darkness and psychological torment.
It's right good to have you here, Dave. Macbeth's a right special play, ain't he? Full of witches, murder and madness. Let's start by telling our listeners about the main plot, shall we?
Absolutely, Matty. So, Macbeth begins with our title character, a brave Scottish general, meeting 3 witches on a heath after a victorious battle. These weird sisters make 3 prophecies. Macbeth will be Thane of Cawdor, Macbeth will be king, and Banquo's sons will be kings.
Aye, and then the first prophecy comes true straight away, don't it? King Duncan makes Macbeth Thane of Cawdor as a reward for his bravery in battle. And that's when things start going downhill, isn't it?
That's right, Matty. When the first prophecy comes true, Macbeth starts to wonder about the second, becoming king. And here's where we see one of the play's central themes emerge, the corrupting power of unchecked ambition.
It's a reet important scene when he writes that letter to his wife, Lady Macbeth. She's a right piece of work, ain't she? As soon as she reads about to witch's prophecy, she's cooking up a plan to murder King Duncan when he comes to visit the castle.
Aye, Lady Macbeth is one of Shakespeare's most fascinating female characters. In that famous scene, she calls on dark spirits to unsex her and fill her with cruelty. She fears her husband is too full of the milk of human kindness to seize the crown through murder.
That's a cracking bit of the play, that is. And then there's that scene where Macbeth's having doubts about killing Duncan. He says he's here in double trust. Duncan's both his king and his guest. But Lady Macbeth, she questions his manhood, don't she? Calls him a coward.
Aye, she manipulates him brilliantly. She says she would have dashed the brains out of her own baby had she promised to do so. It's her forceful personality that pushes him over the edge. And then the deed is done. Duncan is murdered in his sleep.
It's a right important point, that. To ambition of both of them leads to this terrible act. But what happens next really shows how unchecked ambition don't stop with just one murder, does it?
That's exactly right, Matty. Once Macbeth has committed that first terrible crime, he's set upon a path of destruction. He becomes paranoid about Banquo, whose sons were prophesied to be kings. So he arranges for Banquo's murder, but Banquo's son Fleance escapes.
And that's when the guilt starts really eating away at him, isn't it? There's that amazing banquet scene where Macbeth sees Banquo's ghost, but nobody else can see it. He's going proper mad with guilt, shouting at an empty chair.
It's one of the most powerful scenes in all of Shakespeare, I think. Macbeth's guilt manifests as this hallucination, this vision of the man he's just had murdered. And Lady Macbeth has to cover for him, telling the guests he's just having a momentary illness.
While we're talking about guilt, we can't forget about Lady Macbeth's famous sleepwalking scene, can we? It's later into play, but it shows how guilt affects different people in different ways.
Oh, that scene. Out, damned spot, out, I say. Lady Macbeth's trying to wash imaginary blood from her hands. The doctor observes her and says, what she has known she should not have known. Her guilt has driven her to madness.
It's right interesting how Shakespeare shows guilt affecting both of them differently, isn't it? Macbeth sees ghosts and has visions, while Lady Macbeth can't sleep and keeps trying to wash away the blood that's not there. Shows how guilt can destroy you from the inside out.
Absolutely. And that destructive guilt is a direct result of their original sin, that unchecked ambition that led them to murder. Lady Macbeth eventually takes her own life, and Macbeth's response is that famous tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow speech, showing how empty life has become for him.
That's a right powerful speech, that is. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. By this point, Macbeth has lost everything. His wife, his friends, his reputation. All because of that initial act driven by ambition.
And the play ends with justice being served. Macduff, whose wife and children were murdered on Macbeth's orders, kills Macbeth in battle. The final scene shows Malcolm, Duncan's son, being crowned the rightful King of Scotland.
It's interesting that the play ends with order being restored, isn't it? It's like Shakespeare showing us that even though ambition and evil might seem to win for a bit, justice will eventually triumph.
I think that's one of the great messages of the play, Matty. The temporary victory of evil gives way to the restoration of order. But the journey there is filled with psychological torment for the characters who chose the wrong path.
So, what do you reckon are the main takeaways from Macbeth then? For me, it's that ambition, unchecked ambition, leads to destruction, and guilt is a punishment that eats you away.
I agree completely. It's about how that initial temptation, in this case political ambition, can corrupt even a good person like Macbeth once was. And once you start down that dark path, it becomes impossible to turn back. The guilt becomes its own punishment, even before justice catches up with you.
That's right profound, that is. I think another lesson is about being careful what you wish for. Macbeth got what he wanted. He became king, but it didn't bring him any happiness, did it? It just brought paranoia, guilt, and eventually his downfall.
Aye, and I think there's something else worth mentioning. The role of fate versus free will. The witches predict Macbeth will be king, but they didn't tell him to murder Duncan. That choice was his own, influenced by his wife. Shakespeare's showing us that while fate might point us in certain directions, we still make our own moral choices.
That's a really good point, Dave. Macbeth could have just waited to see if he became king naturally, couldn't he? But his ambition and his wife's manipulation led him to take matters into his own hands, and that's what caused all to tragedy.
Exactly. And that's why Macbeth remains such a powerful play even today. It shows us the dangers of taking shortcuts to power, of letting ambition override our moral compass. These are themes that resonate in any time period.
Well, it looks like we're running out of time, Dave. I've really enjoyed chatting about Macbeth with you today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Just that Macbeth shows us the deepest parts of human nature, our ambition, our guilt, our fear, our desire for power. Shakespeare understood these aspects of humanity so well, and that's why his plays still speak to us today, 400 years later.
Couldn't have put it better myself. Thanks for joining us on Shakespeare's Stage, everyone. If you've enjoyed our discussion on Macbeth, please do subscribe for more chats about the Bard's greatest works. Until next time, remember, be careful what you wish for.
Aye, and don't go meeting any witches on lonely heaths. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for listening.